Okay, I'll be honest. I disagree with the notion of Duck beating Thomas from, unlike the other Thomas the Tank Engine edits like Train Fan 234, Great Western Edits, or others. Why, you may ask? Because of me using a different scaling method, power scaling itself, and me at least understanding that in any power scaling discussion, that size doesn't mean anything, not mattering at all. And this is probably going to be a really pretty. It's not going to be a very easy discussion to talk about. I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but honestly, I digress. And despite the fact that many other Thomas the Tank Engine editors tend to use realistic scaling logic or any other, because I think some characters that tend to be underrated gets unironically overrated by some goons out there and show themselves to be no better. Look at you, Donald and Douglas. For the overview of this matchup, I'm going to be using power scaling method, of course, for the sake of this particular discussion, and I will be including most of the feats from our Railway Series or RWS, Model Series, and CGI. And of course, it's going to include the most hated one, like Nitrogen era, Hit era, and maybe some Big World, Big Adventure, but otherwise, not many Big World or Big Adventure, and no Thomas and the Magic Railway stuff, since it is confirmed to be not be canon. And I'm not gonna be including any of those magazines, annuals, or other medias. And trust me, I will not be holding back some of my punches at all. This topic is partly inspired by some YouTubers versus battle, like High Flyers tag teams, Monsterverse Godzilla versus Final Wars Godzilla, and I'll be using their similar stats counting. Though I will be adding some spins to it and more categories like experience, intelligence, access, skills, and endurance, and others if appropriate. So here, this is what the layout that I'm gonna be using is gonna look like. Of course, I did try to add some more stats, categories, points, but I feel like that's gonna take a long time and we'll be here forever. So for the sake of this matchup and trying to keep it short, uh we'll just stick to what kind of points I have and use them for the time being. Starting off with durability. This is easy. Thomas takes it, no question. Simply more feats. I can't remember much of Duck's accident or other durability feats where he really gets hurt, besides crashing into the barber shop, slamming into the kipper van, or getting soaked in the puddle. CGI such as the Miller era or the Brenner era. After the model series, like the Hit era, they get really crazy with Thomas's durability, such as in the Hero of the Rails movie, where Thomas plows through a jam and a potato truck, and it comes out fine. Or when he jumps the reclining bridge in the Great Race movie. Even if you try and downplay Thomas and wank Duck, it is clear who the winner of these stats is. Attack potency. Again, Thomas takes this, despite of his smaller size. Thomas, especially in the hit era, when he got really pissed off, bashed Ari and Hector off the rail. That is a pretty impressive one for his small size. Compared to Ducks, it's probably the old Kipper in the episode Fish, but Thomas takes this one again. Strength wise, okay, I'm probably gonna give this to Duck, since his best feat was in bowled out when he helped Stepney pull the express after an arrogant diesel failed. The RWS version of bowled out stated that both him and Stepney were pulling up to 15 coaches up the hill, opposed to 3 coaches in the model era. Of course, Duck was pretty doubtful and he needed help, but meanwhile, although Thomas does undoubtedly has some strength feats to match up with Duck, such as in Hero of the Rail, contesting against Spencer while pulling a long, heavy train. However, for the sake of being fair and going off their in real life stats and me not being all that acknowledgeable at or remembering Thomas's best strength showing, I'm gonna give this to Duck. For speed, Thomas takes speed. 17 miles per hour against 50 miles per hour for Duck in real life. Of course, there are some inconsistency, of course, such as Thomas keeping up ahead of Spencer or and Diesel 10. However, though, Duck along with Stepney speed in the Railway Series version of Bowled Out is stated to be mere blurs, meaning both of them were traveling over the base's top speed as well. But what do I know? Speed to Thomas. Moving on. Stammer is kind of a tough one. If you go by in real life stats, Duck should be more built for longer distance and heavier workload. But feats wise, Thomas there are times Thomas tends to overwork himself, going above his limits and what he's capable of. But it's kind of a toss up. So for this one, it'll be a tie for now. Duck, I'm gonna give Duck intelligent, since Thomas can be very inconsistent and at times pre-flanderized, and with the worst being in the CGI and the hit era. Even though there are some moments where he has some pretty good arcs, especially in special, such as Soto of the Legend of the Lost Treasure. But even then, he often, in that movie and even other movies or specials like The Great Discovery, he often lets his temper or ego take control more than Duck does. So, intelligence to Duck. Battle IQ, however, is a different story. Sin when has Duck ever For example, rallies up the Steamies and Diesel to form an alliance to finish the airport, save Hero from Spencer, solving the mystery on Luke in the Blue Mountain, contesting against Sailor John, stealing the treasure, trying to deliver the safety valve to the ignorant Gordon, and going up against Frankie and Hurricane to save James. Even in the older model era, such as Season 5, Thomas at least tries to be reasonable around the whole Harold debacle, helping old slow coach from scrap, rescuing James from falling trees and others. What does Duck unfortunately have over these? Maybe helping Dexter the coach? Otherwise, Thomas just destroys in this. I don't want to hear it. Skills. Well, Duck does have some pretty advanced skills, such as handling the slip coaching. I don't really think it's all that plentiful against Thomas's other skills, as I just mentioned before. So I think I'll give Thomas the skill. Yeah, yeah. It's pretty debatable. Experience is where I know a lot of people like Train Friend 234 will disagree. But Thomas simply next. To put it simply, he just has more episode and movies. Duck, even with his great Western knowledge and being more being more diverse and used in the Railway series book, the television series, and the model era and the Sitra era, there's just too much. There's just way too much for Duck to handle in experience. Thomas just absolutely destroys. Now for Hexus. Well, be a pretty this will be a pretty tough one. But however, despite not being the most stronger or the bigger one, he still more than makes up for it in other, physical category and advantages like durability, attack potency, and speed. Speed. Just too, just way too much qualitative hacks to even compare. The only now, the only thing I can really give for Duck at the, however, because since he's definitely not faring against pretty very well against Thomas, especially with power scaling. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and give him raw power. Obviously, self-explanatory. Endurance wise, once again, different from different from stamina. Duck. I don't. I can't remember a lot of endurance feat for Duck, since he's pretty much as featless as the likes of Oliver, Donald, and Douglas. Onto that later, but I'm gonna give endurance to Thomas. It's debatable, but once again, more showings. Like holding Hank Strange in the season 12 episode, and again, hero of the rail, enduring pulling a long heavy train beyond his limit. So my final verdict is that Thomas wins. Duck may be even lucky to get it above mid difficulty at best. Duck may really have strengths, size, raw power, knowledge, some form of intelligence, and others, but all that falls under Thomas, this, who's simply just has more superior feats and showing, especially when using power scaling method, which I know is definitely gonna get looked it's definitely looked down upon a lot. But that's just anti-power scaling really. In fact, what really killed Duck is if mentality or intelligence matters truly matters in a matchup, then Thomas's better IQ, battle IQ, experience, skills, and not to mention that he is more aggressive when angry, and he's more willing to, attack, like shove an engine or a truck off the rail. And I did try to give Duck as much credit as I could, but as I said before, he just suffers greatly from neglect, mistreatment since season 7. He thankfully did fare better, and there was one episode to my knowledge of where he rescues Dexter, the coach, but that doesn't sugarcoat the fact that he just isn't, he's just barely better than the likes of Donald, Douglas, Oliver, or any other those sideline character. And to finish off, I know people like the Duck fans. There's some Thomas the Tank Engine versus editor will likely get angry, objects my claim, and will try to attack and even worse, harass. But I stand by my point. In fact, this isn't just a video where I'm just expressing my thoughts and views or opinions. This is also where I try to experiment with something slightly different since I don't follow the usual norms or convention of most Thomas the Tank Engine editors. Because of this, as I did warn those Thomas the Tank Engine editors in Train Friend 234 Discord before, my Thomas the Tank Engine matchup can vary differently. And I will disagree with probably a lot of the takes. And honestly, I think it's at least best that I make this a bit more clear, since there's always going to be a potential fight or arguments that will come along, and it can definitely be very it gets out of hand. And but please remember, when at least if you disagree with some of what I said and would like to disagree with what I said, please try to be cordial and civil, because this is of course, my first time I ever uploaded something on YouTube, and I'm not sure how it's gonna go work out. But of course, I'm definitely not gonna consider doing YouTube all the time. But for now, first video, hopefully this doesn't stir too much trouble.